Uh, Good afternoon, first, and thank you for inviting me. It's very significant. Before meeting with Trump, he has to hammer out issues with Witkoff. And the key issue here is that, as Americans say, there is a new sheriff in town. Trump is not Biden. There is a new sheriff in town. There is a new leadership in Washington. The man that the Israelis took for granted, took everything, and then ignored, is not in the White House anymore. And the Trump team made sure the Israelis know that by setting the right tone from the beginning. When Witkoff went to the Middle East and he wanted to meet with Netanyahu, Netanyahu said, "I can meet with you Sunday, not Saturday." Witkoff insisted on Saturday, and then a ceasefire was obtained even before Trump was in the White House. So I think it's right tone. The leading power is the United States, not Israel, and Israel can just take, and not listen. And I'm optimistic. I think that the ceasefire is going to continue, and Netanyahu will be facing pressure from Trump.
Mhm. Mr. Manna, now, given that phase two requires Hamas to release all remaining detainees with the Israeli forces' full withdrawal, what are the main obstacles that may hinder the second phase negotiations?
Greetings to you and to the viewers. No doubt, I think that the second phase is much more difficult than the first one, given that there is the most significant issue in the all negotiations, and also to Israel and the US, which is the Gaza Strip and who's going to run it. And the US and Israel want to remove Hamas from the scene, which is really difficult to happen in the light of the incapability of Israel to end Hamas in Gaza. And in my opinion, that the basic point here, which is the dilemma that will face the second phase, that Israel and the US are trying to find an entity to run the Gaza Strip away from Hamas and the PLO. On the Palestinian level, it's totally rejected, and it will be accepted in Palestine, whether at the political level or the people level. I think this point will be the main obstacle to prolong the first phase, till we reach an agreement on who is going to run Gaza. And with a lack of options, there might be a technocrat rule with the participation of the PLO and Hamas indirectly in the scene.
Mr. Al-Khatib, now, with Netanyahu becoming the first foreign leader to meet Trump after his return to office, how significant is the US influence in shaping Israel's decisions, and how might this change under a potential Trump or under a Trump administration, especially after he will be meeting the President Trump after meeting with Witkoff? Do you think Trump will have any sort of additional personal input, or will things and details be hammered out with Witkoff before?
I think the fact that that Netanyahu is the first foreign leader to meet Trump at the White House is a sign of how important the peace process and the Abrahamic accords are to Trump, not how important Israel is. I mean, Israel is important. Everybody knows that. But the fact that Trump made a big deal out of his program for the Middle East, he said during the election, while campaigning in Michigan, he said he wants a ceasefire and he wants peace, and he's moving in that direction. The key here is the issue is not the Palestinians, the issue is not Hamas, the issue is not Gaza, the issue is the peace process. Because we look at the West Bank, we see that there are problems there, even though Mahmoud Abbas is there. And the Economist magazine said that Israel is strangulating, I think they use the term, the Palestinian Authority. I mean, it treats it as an enemy. And when the issue is not really the Palestinians, but the Israelis have all the cards in their hands. I mean, yes, there is Palestinian resistance, but we can't forget that it's Israel that's controlling everything. I mean, Israel controls everything. The Palestinians are occupied. They are the weaker party. And the issue has always been Israel, because when the issue was Gaza the day after, the question was, for the Israelis said, we don't want Mahmoud Abbas. The Israelis said they don't want Hamas. And the Israelis said they don't even want UNRWA that provides humanitarian services. For the issue is the Israelis, the ball is in their court. They're divided. Some of them want to reoccupy permanently. Some of them want to kick out the Palestinians, establish settlements. That's why they're trying to avoid making hard decisions. So it's really not about Hamas and not about Mahmoud Abbas. I think the Palestinians are very flexible, actually. And the Israelis are the problem, because here you have an extreme right-wing religious government that is approaching the conflict from a religious point of view, that the land is holy and they want it. And you can see that from the reaction to Trump's suggestion that he did not ask for. He suggested that moving the Palestinians temporarily or long-term, he said. And the Israelis were beyond themselves, a segment of them, beyond themselves, very happy. Oh my, it's like their Messiah has come, and that they're going to get rid of the Gazans. And that's not going to happen. The issue is that they're stuck with the Palestinians between the river and the sea. There's 7 million Palestinians, and they have to reach a way of coexisting with them. They cannot kick them out, and they're there, and it's going to be either by the end of the day, and that's the pragmatic Trump. It's going to be either one state or two states. And Trump tested the waters by even suggesting it, and he got the whole world to be against him, not just Egypt and Jordan, the whole Arab world, the rest of the whole world. Even Germany said no, even though Trump was just suggesting, and he said temporary or long term, and still the world said, no way, you're not going to kick the Palestinians out. Ethnic cleansing is not allowed. So the Israelis now get the hint. It's either one state or two states. What do you want to do?
Mm-hmm. Well, Mr. Manna, this begs the question now, given the influence of the hard right in Israel, how likely is it that Prime Minister Netanyahu will agree to phase 2 of the ceasefire, which requires a declaration of sustainable calm and the withdrawal of the Israeli forces from Gaza?
In my opinion, that the current deal phases, each phase is a challenge for Israel, which leads Israel to accept the following phases. But the Israeli maneuver level today will tackle more than an issue at once. The first one is the hostage situation. They will preserve some of the names that will be pushed to the third round of swaps, which will be rejected by the Palestinians because they requested these specific names to be released in the second phase, and Israel has vetoed those names. This might be the first maneuver. The second, regarding who's going to rule Gaza, there will be an Israeli maneuver. They will try to impose a lot of conditions and terms on who's going to rule Gaza. Till this moment, Israel is rejecting the Palestinian Authority to return to Gaza, as well as Hamas. What are the options now? I think the options are very difficult. Either to occupy the Gaza Strip completely, which will result in a very negative results, and the status will remain the same, and this is also unfeasible to Israel. It's only a short-term solution. Now, with the lack of any kind of organization in Gaza or the state of chaos, we have very few options. We might reach a technocratic rule with the participation of the Palestinian Authority. Going back to war, this scenario is unlikely because there is a US project of normalization in the region. In my opinion, it is one of the most important issues that to be discussed by Netanyahu and Trump during his visit, and in my opinion, that this normalization issue is a priority to Trump, and this factor will guarantee the non-return to war on Gaza and the lack of escalation in the Middle East. And now we see what's happening on the West Bank. It's very difficult for Trump to achieve his vision regarding normalization. That's why Benjamin Netanyahu might come back with some guarantees that from the United States. As Israel also do not want to go back to the fight, they only want a guarantee to move freely in Gaza with a similar model to what's happening in the West Bank. We see the demographics of Gaza posing a challenge to Israel, hindering it from achieving the same or doing the same as they do in the West Bank. Benjamin Netanyahu now is going to come back with a guarantee of war, as stated by Smotrich and Ben Gvir. But what is it in exchange for? What is the alternative? Is it gonna be the West Bank or the annexation or the U.S. promises to make changes in the West Bank for the interest of Israel? I think this is what Benjamin Netanyahu is going to be promised in the U.S.
Mr. Al-Khatib, now with the incoming IOF Chief of Staff, Eyal Zamir, stating that 2025 will remain a year of conflict, what would you make of his statements, and do you think it will have any sort of bearing on the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire and ultimately turning it into a permanent one?
You see, the military doesn't make policy. It's Netanyahu, basically, and in the cabinet. So I don't put much weight on what he says. Basically, Netanyahu and his coalition, they don't have peace as a goal. They really don't care about peace. They want occupation. They have a messianic view of the conflict. Now it's religious Zionism. These people are driven by emotion and eschatological thinking, the end of the world, the Messiah coming and all that, and the land as holy, and they have to take it over and settle it and all that. That's why they were salivating when Trump suggested the idea of moving Palestinians temporarily. I don't think that the solution is in Israel. The solution is in political will, in the White House. Now there is a new leadership. Trump is very intelligent. Netanyahu is very intelligent. I think Netanyahu is a genius, but Trump is a genius too. He's very intelligent. The way he won the presidency again shows he's an exceptional person. He's calling the Israelis bluff, showing them that basically they have two options. They don't have three options. They can't just keep playing for time. What the Israelis don't want to face hard choices is that you have these people you're living with, and you have two choices. Either you separate or you have a state for everyone. The whole world, rose up against suggesting moving the Gaza people, who are a fraction of the Palestinian people. You have 7 million between the river and the sea, not just Gaza. So he's pragmatic, he's very practical, he's looking for solutions. He's basically humored the Israelis by suggesting moving the Palestinians. He knows there's no way on earth anybody will accept it, but he wants to show that.
Mr. Khatib, speaking of the policymakers, what about the finance minister, Bezalel Smotrich, actually threatening to quit and strip the prime minister of the Knesset majority if he does not resume the war? What do you think that will have, what sort of effect do you think that will have on the future of this ceasefire turning permanent and obviously the second phase?
Pressure from the extreme right has always been there, and that's why Netanyahu continued with the war. But the key is that Biden enabled the continuation of the war because he refused to pressure the Israelis. So if there is pressure from the right wing, there is pressure from the White House, and they need the United States. And if these minor Zionist religious parties, they would have never come to power had it not been for Netanyahu. Netanyahu brought them to power. They're marginal in Israel. If there is another election, maybe that's good for peace, actually. Now the Israelis will face a choice. Here is the man in the White House, Trump. He's a friend of Israel, and he wants to bring peace to the region. Whether they want peace or they want war, because the Israelis now, if we had Kamala Harris at the White House, they were planning on fighting for years. That's what they said. They want to occupy Gaza under the pretext of fighting Hamas, occupy it for years, build settlements, and try to make the place as miserable as possible for Palestinians to leave, and they can go anywhere. Therefore, this is good actually that there's pressure from inside and outside. Let the Israelis have new elections if this cabinet falls and government falls, and let them have choices. There's Saudi Arabia saying we will normalize with Israel. They've been dreaming of that for decades. Now Netanyahu wants to change the subject. He's coming. You see, the playbook, the Israeli playbook, is changing the subject. Instead of saying, okay, what's the day after? They say Hamas, Hamas, Hamas. They say peace, peace. Oh, the response is Iran, Iran. They want to change the subject. They don't want to make the hard choices. The hard choices are, do you want one state or do you want two states? And let's not waste time. Let's not play games, because the United States doesn't have time for that. The United States wants to conflict so that they can pay attention to China.
Mr. Manna, now with Netanyahu's recent military operations in Jenin and his defined statements about resuming fighting suggests that he is trying to appease the hardliners. You believe that this strategic move to maintain his coalition, or does it reflect his personal stance on the ceasefire deal?
Of course, I think Israel is separating between what's happening in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip and the ceasefire agreement. Since day one, Israel has been trying to isolate the West Bank from Gaza at all levels. That's first. Second, Israel is trying to cultivate an idea which is that it is still continuing the war that started on the 7th of October for political reasons related to Netanyahu and the far right, and trying to delay the investigation committees that will be formed and will deepen the political crisis in Israel. In my opinion, in general, the West Bank today, if the image is showing military targets, but in fact they are political targets. Israel wants first to empty the Palestinian camps, and they're trying to create the internal transfer to evacuate the camps to the cities, to agricultural and countryside cities. Yesterday we have seen in the Jenin camp more than 20 houses have been exploded, and before then there were 30 houses. In the Tulkarm campaign, 75% of the population were evacuated, and the lots of houses were demolished. This internal displacement is an introduction for the mass displacement Netanyahu talked about in more than one occasion. If we took a broader view for the entire West Bank, not just Jenin or Tulkarm, there is a lot of barriers now separating the West Bank from all the surrounding regions.